most distant and isolated region of South America, Patagonia has been shrouded within mystery and a sense of the unknown since the Spanish first discovered the region centuries ago. Even in modern times, the region is still not technically fully explored, fully understood, or even fully populated. This has everything to do with the reasons and circumstances for these facts. The forgotten history. There are reasons why Patagonia is often considered separate from Argentina or Chile, as Patagonia is sometimes mentioned, depicted separately from these countries, and that has to do with the mysterious circumstances of the region's origins. The name for the region, Patagonia, is often referred to as being that of Patagon. Spanish, French, and English accounts had it that a race of giants, or giant indigenous peoples, once lived in Patagonia, and that their origins were unknown. The term of Patagonia emerged from the mentions of the Patagon people, which remains synonymous with the region even into modern times. Though the Patagon people were probably that of mere myth, the name stuck to the region, as the region being that of the most distant of South America has had a human presence for thousands of years. Some of the most extreme estimates range at least 13,000 years before 1502. Concentrated evidence suggests 10,000 to 8,000 years of human settlement before 1502. The indigenous peoples of the region, especially the southernmost regions of Patagonia, were remarked at how much they could take in terms of physical endurance, as the cold weather and climate is extraordinarily harsh. All scientists as well as theorists have commented that they evolved to endure the cold weather, harsh winds, and barren landscapes of the region. There were stories of native peoples being able to live within near sub-zero climates with little to no clothing, and their body temperatures would actually be near normal when taken. Modern science is still technically unable to explain these abnormalities, as the indigenous peoples of Patagonia were different when compared to the people of northern Canada, Alaska, and Siberia, in the fact that they didn't need much clothing when compared to these other indigenous groups of harsh climates. It was also noticed that when these peoples intermarried with the Spaniards, their descendants didn't inherit the immunity to the harsh environments. It's estimated that these astonishing genetics won't ever be truly explained nor recreated in modern times. The denied history. When the conquistadors first ventured into the regions now considered to be that of Chile and Argentina to claim the region for the Spanish crown, the Spanish discoverers remarked at the barren and harsh climate. It was a clear difference from the lush jungles and humid environments of the Caribbean, Central America, or even northern regions of South America. Spanish settlements and military influence essentially stopped at Santiago, Buenos Aires, and Montevideo. These cities were the most southern that Spain would establish in terms of real conquest or serious colonization. There would be occasional expeditions into regions that are now considered northern Patagonia, as the majority of the region was unexplored, and what exactly resided within these regions were unknown to the Spanish authorities. In terms of geography and mapping, the entire region belonged to Spain. This was acknowledged by the Portuguese, English, and French, but the consensus were that the Spanish didn't actually have a presence within Patagonia, other than a supposed claim. However, despite the Spanish crown not desiring to venture into deeper Patagonia, southern Patagonia, which is now considered today, to see what was technically out there possibly, or to venture further into Patagonia for further settlement, local governmental officials within what is now Argentina and Chile were very eager for expansion into the region. These requests for exploration were clearly denied by the Spanish crown. Due to the sheer size of the Spanish Empire, in the mid-1600s to mid-1700s, had Spain with only sparse settlements throughout Patagonia, mostly in crude attempts to enforce its claim to the region. As a result, settlement by the Spanish focused in what are now considered more populated regions of Argentina and Chile. In the mid to late 1700s, due in part to the lack of Spanish exploration or even true expansion into Patagonia, there were interests in terms of science to explore the region. Without the encouragement of significant Spanish interest in the region, a number of British explorers slowly began to make progress within the region by venturing into it. As a result of the increased British presence within the region, in the early 1800s, Britain seized an opportunity to invade the region by attempting to annex it into the British Empire. These invasion attempts occurred through 1806 and 1807, which are now considered to be the British invasions of the River Plate. These incidents, along with other circumstances, caused sentiment among the peoples within the region, as well as local militia groups that were able to successfully repeal the British invasion, caused sentiment within the region to grow against Spanish authority, which were some of the circumstances which caused the region to declare independence from Spain as Argentina. As a result of all the Spanish colonies declaring independence from Spain throughout South America in the early to mid 1800s, the entire continent became politically and socially unstable. In part to help stabilize the newly independent nations, Chile and Argentina sought to finally claim Patagonia for their respective nations for international prestige as well as legitimacy for their new governments. Due to situations, Chile lost all claims to Patagonia, as Argentina eventually acquired the entire region through circumstances still considered a matter of controversy within Chile to this very day, as more radical factions within the Chilean government, as well as the Chilean population, view parts or all of Patagonia to be Chilean through the colonial Spanish claims. The censored history. Despite Chile losing claim to most of Patagonia, it retained the Pacific coast as both Chile and Argentina expanded national borders southward aggressively in the mid to late 1800s. Within Argentina, this period of the country's history is called the Conquest of the Desert, as they were brutal campaigns by the Argentine military against indigenous peoples living throughout southern Patagonia. As the Spanish before them, both the Chileans and Argentines had a problem: an extraordinary amount of land, but little to no people in terms of settlement of the region. Populations in Santiago within Chile and Buenos Aires within Argentina had no real desire to vacate their comfortable homes and lives within the metropolitan areas of developed Argentina or Chile for the desolate and isolated regions of Patagonia. At this time, the Argentine government promoted the region for settlement, but owing to the climate and geography, the only Europeans interested in living within that region were of German, Croatian, and Welsh backgrounds, as the Argentine government at first welcomed these peoples, and soon a few settlements of German and Welsh backgrounds slowly developed and prospered within Patagonia. But due to a combination of the communities not truly desiring to be associated with the Argentine government, as well as the sheer remoteness of the settlements, they were, and still are, semi-independent with little contact or association with Argentina as a country, nor the Latin culture that Argentina is in modern times, as the settlements kept most of their own traditions and celebrations, rather than assimilate into the Argentine way of life. The border of Patagonia between Chile and Argentina was still unresolved well into the late 1800s and early 1900s, as the British, whom had experience in the region, mediated the claims by both countries. Despite the British attempting to mediate claims, the Argentine government secretly sent a military presence into the region to force out any Chileans living within what Argentina claimed to be Patagonia. The Argentine position was that if there were substantial amounts of Chileans living within Argentine claimed Patagonia, it might cause a legitimate claim by Chile to the entire region, and Argentina didn't want this, as eventually most of the claim went to Argentina, as to this day, Argentina doesn't allow excessive amounts of Chilean populations to reside within Patagonia. In the early 1900s, Britain sought to reinforce its claim to the small settlement of the Falkland Islands, as originally these islands were claimed by Spain, but no indigenous peoples ever technically settled upon the islands and had no native populations at the time of claim by Britain. Upon its independence, Argentina couldn't do anything about the British claim to the Falkland Islands, which dated back to the 1700s, as for a period of time both Britain and Spain claimed the Falkland Islands. Due to the Spanish not truly exploring the Falkland Islands, the British slowly reinforced the settlements within the Falkland Islands that they had developed, and by the time Spain noticed the British presence there, nothing could be done about it. Due to Argentina having an unstable government in the early 1900s, nothing could be done to force the British out of the Falkland Islands. On through the two world wars, Argentina somewhat relaxed its claim to the islands. From the 1900s, tourism to Patagonia gave much needed revenue to the Argentine government. On through the 1970s and 1980s, political rhetoric by the Argentine government sought to expel Britain from the Falkland Islands, and to claim them for Argentina through the colonial Spanish claims. Argentina wasn't strong enough militarily to expel Britain from the islands, and later they were designated a special region of the United Kingdom. Despite Argentina claiming the islands, due to the sheer remoteness of the islands from effective Argentine control, Britain and even the United States keep a military as well as governmental presence within Patagonia through the Falkland Islands. As to the status of Patagonia, it will be, as it always was, a beautiful yet sparsely developed region of the world.